Hari Om. In this video, we are going to cover the dice game part of the Mahabharata. To quickly recap, in the last video, we saw how Pandavas built Indraprastha at the ruined Khandavaprastha forest. We saw how Mayasur helped in creating the magical hall, which had many optical illusions created using advanced sciences. We also saw sage Narada's story of Apsara Tilottama, which inspired the Pandavas to share Draupadi on a yearly basis. We saw how Arjuna had to go on a 1 year exile, and finally, we saw how Duryodhan was super jealous of Pandava's prosperity and he felt deeply insulted when he saw Draupadi laughing at him falling into the pond. Duryodhan's envy of the Pandavas is the root cause of the tragedy that is the Mahabharata. It is not that he has less money, power, or fame, but that his cousins have more that makes him suffer. Duryodhan hastened to his father, complained against this disparity between the two kingdoms, and sought his permission for gambling with the Pandavas. After lots of persuasion, Dhritarashtra agrees and asks Vidur to go and explain to Yudhishthir the entertainment planned for the sons of Pandus using the game of dice. In Vedic times, gambling with dice was considered a sacred ritual, just as no king could ignore a challenge to a duel or a call to a battle, no king could turn down an invitation to a gambling match. Gambling showed if a king was blessed with intelligence and luck. Krishna embodies intelligence, and Draupadi embodies luck. The Pandavas entered the gambling hall with Shakuni, with neither Krishna or Draupadi. Shakuni suggested that they played a game of dice to while away time. Yudhishthir discriminated and said, "This game of dice is nothing but cheating. Gambling deprives man of discrimination. It is intoxicating as wine." To that, Shakuni said, "So you care more for wealth than the Kshatriya spirit of accepting a challenge?" Yudhishthir's feeling and his ego was hurt. He responded, "I am not as fond of wealth as you are. I accept the challenge. Who is to be my opponent, and what is the wager?" To that Duryodhan said, "I wager whatever you wager, but my uncle Shakuni plays on my behalf." Yudhishthir was surprised. He said, "One man wagering and the other man playing on his behalf is not the rule. But still, if you're bent on it, let the play begin." At this point, Yudhishthir made two serious mistakes. One, he ignored his weakness for gambling, and two, he was okay with the irregularity of Shakuni playing, which was totally at his disadvantage. At first, Yudhishthir stakes his own jewels, gems, gold, and everything that he was wearing. Yudhishthir first tossed the dice, but to no effect. Shakuni tosses it next, and he wins. Yudhishthir then stakes his horses, army, and all his wealth. The trickery of Shakuni was triumphant all throughout. Soon Yudhishthir lost everything, including the kingdom of Indraprastha. After thinking for some time, he stakes Nakul and Sahadev and even loses them. After that, he stakes Arjuna and Bhima and loses them too. Eventually, he stakes himself and he loses himself to the game of dice. And finally, he stakes Draupadi and he even loses her. Thus, he loses everything that he possessed, including being now the slaves of the Kauravas. Duryodhan embraced this crafty Shakuni and said, "Uncle, this is the happiest day in my life." Then he ordered Dusashan, his younger brother, to fetch the slave Draupadi to the assembly. With glee written large on his face, Dusashan dragged Draupadi to the court, holding her hair. She picked up fortitude and protested. Does this august assembly approve of a woman being manhandled in this manner? There was no response from anybody. She continued, she said, I am told my husband lost himself in the game of dice, then he pledged me. Was he right in wagering me after losing his own independence? All were still silent. Turning to the drooping Yudhishthir, she demanded, is this action of yours as laudable as the Rajsuya Yagna that you just performed? Yudhishthir wished that he died on the spot, but he did not, and he could not speak a word. Turning to the assembly, Draupadi made bold statements and said, my husband ever obeys the orders of his uncle Dhritarashtra. The uncle invited the nephew here and induced him to gamble. His inexperience and inclination to gambling were taken advantage of. This assembly has plundered my husband. Plunderers are not righteous and truthful. So, this is the house of ignoble people. I want somebody to tell me if my husband was right in wagering me after he became a slave. To that, no one spoke anything. In the Swayamvar at Panchal, Draupadi could not be won by Duryodhan. That complex was lurking in the heart of Duryodhan. Also, the revenge that he wanted to take of the event that happened in Indraprasth when he fell into the pond and Draupadi laughed at him. And he wanted to disgrace Draupadi in public. So Duryodhan ordered Dushasan to strip Draupadi of her stari. The younger brother rushed for this nefarious job. The husbands could not protest, and the others spoke nothing. As Dushasan started pulling the sari off, Draupadi, helpless Draupadi, surrendered herself to the mercy of Sri Krishna. The Lord responded. Dushasan stripped off sari after sari. He made a heap of them higher than himself and finally fell exhausted, but the sari on Draupadi always was present. There are 2 points that are self evident in this incident. God's grace is unfailing to the devotee who makes complete self surrender. The mystery of nature cannot be fully probed into. Here, Draupadi represents the nature. Duryodhana next purposefully exhibited his left thigh before Draupadi in order to insult her. Just then, the valiant Bhima thundered, if I do not do you to death by smashing this thigh in war, I swear I shall not enter the heaven of my heroic fathers. Then turning to Dushasan, Bhima said, if I do not split your heart in war and drink the blood in it, I swear I shall not enter the heroic heavens of my forefathers. Karna induced Dushasan to drag Draupadi away and allot such menial work befitting of a slave. He also said that Draupadi should be the wife of Kauravas as she was the wife of Pandavas. Hearing these words, Arjuna flared up and said, when time comes, I vow I shall sever your head and make it roll on earth so that you would die in war with me. Sorry, you would die in war by my hand. So also Sahadev vowed that he would kill the sinster Shakuni. But Yudhishthir at this time pacified all the brothers and said they would do everything that abides by dharma. Draupadi at this time was trying to appeal to Dhritarashtra to save her from the evil designs of his wicked sons. Drona, Vidura, and others defended her cause. A fit of righteousness drawn on the mind of blind king Dhritarashtra. He spoke very kindly to Draupadi and promised boons to her. The humiliated woman pleaded for freedom to Yudhishthir. It was then and then granted. The father in law permitted her to ask for another boon. She pleaded for the freedom of other four brothers and also the weapons that they owned. and it was readily granted as well. She was encouraged to ask for another boon. She said, "That is enough." And soon they were about to leave. As the Pandavas were leaving with their weapons and their wife, Karna chuckled and shouted, "Draupadi is the raft that saved the drowning Pandavas. Have they no shame, saved by a woman? What they lost in a game, they accept in charity instead of earning it back. Come back and play a final game. Yudhishthir, one game, just one game, and win all that you have lost, especially your honor," cried the Kauravas. "And if I lose?" asked Yudhishthir, indicating his willingness to play to the dismay of his brothers. Kauravas said, "12 years in exile in the forest, taking with you nothing but what you carry on your body, with no claim on Indraprastha for that period, followed by the final 13th year living in hiding. Should you be discovered during the final year, you shall go back into exile for another 12 years." Yudhishthir accepted the terms of the game and made his way to the gambling table. His brothers protested. His wife begged him to stop, but Yudhishthir refuses to listen. "I will surely win this last game." The dice was rolled once again, and once again Shakuni won. The Pandavas were now obliged to leave their city and move into the forest for 13 long years. When they were leaving, Yudhishthir covered his face with a cloth so as to avoid his angry eyes destroying Hastinapur. Bhima flexed his arms that were restless to break the bones of each and every Kaurava. Arjuna picked up a fistful of sand and let it trail behind him, indicating the showers of millions arrows that would soon fall upon those who had wronged his family. Nakula covered himself with mud so that no beautiful woman would be tempted to follow him into the forest. Sahadev painted his face black in shame, and Draupadi let her hair streak across her face, terrifying the women of the city of their eventual fate. There are lots of insights in this story. The insulting of Draupadi and her miraculous rescue in the royal court also has profound spiritual meaning. As this was discussed, Pandavas represents individual soul Arjuna in association with fourfold self-effort towards primary values of life: dharma, artha, kama, and moksha. Draupadi is the personification of the intellect who is deeply involved with these five, as if married to them. There comes a time in everyone's life when intellect realizes that it cannot depend upon anything that is known in the world, that all its supports are feeble, that all its egoistic resources are of no use. In those significant moments, one realizes that one must rely only on his own spiritual strength or the divine grace flowing from within. This is what happened in the royal court when Dusashan was harassing Draupadi. And Draupadi realizes that she could not be protected by anyone other than Krishna. Similarly, why did Draupadi just ask for freedom and weapons and not everything that they had lost? Draupadi does not request the return of the lost wealth when Dhritarashtra grants her the boon. She requested only her family freedom and weapons. This is symbolic of the intellect's determination not to allow luxury to distract it from attaining the goal of life: liberation. Just as the soul on the path of enlightenment must one pointedly strive to eliminate the enemies within, so too the task of the Pandavas was clearly to destroy the evil Kauravas so that peace could reign. Just as an aspirant needs the spiritual weapons of meditation and prayer, of sadhana shakti, the power derived from the practice of spiritual discipline, so too the Pandavas needed only their freedom and weapons to enable them to perform austerity needed to lead them to eventual victory. Think. In the next video, we will see the third parva of Mahabharata and the stories about Pandavas' exile for 12 to 13 years in forest. If you have a question or a comment or an alternate view to share, put them in the comments section below. If you like this video, hit like and subscribe to my channel. Thank you. Hari Om.